ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Intergraph Process, Power and Marine Division President, Gerhard Sallinger.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you enjoy your time here in Las Vegas. Do you? Good, good. So, in the next 20 minutes, I'll bore you with a couple of facts and data about the PPM division. But don't worry, after this, Patrick Holcomb, Charles Evans, and Melanie Eakes will join me on stage and will show you some of the cool stuff they are working on. And that's the real fun part, okay? All right. So before I start, I want to just give you an update on the number of customers and PPM-related customers being here. So this year, it's altogether more than 1,000, which is about 1/3 more than last year. And thank you very much already on that point for coming here, spending the time with us. And I hope you find it worthwhile to do that. Okay. So, what I'll talk about is a little bit of mixture of data and a few industry-related facts. And one fact I think we all agree to, this is a challenging time for all of us by many different aspects. First, as we have talked about yesterday already, just again, the global demand for energy and raw materials continues to grow. Although we see some problems like the European finance crisis, which is slowing down, grows a little bit. Maybe the price of oil went down in the last couple of weeks, but still the long and midterm trend is unbroken. The world will need more energy, more raw materials, etc. The plants being built these days, in the last couple of years, what we see, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and more complex and more complex. And this is a huge challenge for all the customers. On the logistical side, on the material side, on the design and engineering side. So it's a matter of fact, right? So, recognizing this and talking to you and hear what you tell us, we are working as hard as we can to deliver you solutions and products to help you to build better and safer plants, more productive and effective than in the past. Okay, update on Intergraph's market position. Many of you are familiar with ARC. Those of you who are not, ARC is an American consulting company, and they do each year for different industries analysis about ranking, size, and business relevance, etc., etc. And they, again, it's not the first time they did that, but again, last year they ranked Intergraph PP&M as the #1 leader for software for this industry. And so we are proud of that. Growth, just a little bit a view in the history. So since 2004, and don't ask me why I did chose 2004, there is no specific reason, but they need to start somewhere, right? Since 2004, our revenue has grown by 300%, so tripled revenue in the last 8 years. And again, I thank you very much for that, because that money is your money and not ours. And it's coming from your trust. Normally, I don't talk about, or much, at least not on stage, about the competition, but I thought this time maybe I should. And there's no name on that, so you can search the market and figure out who that could be. Anyway, it's a little bit hard to interpret, maybe, so I explain what it is. What we basically did, and again, I did chose 2008 in this case as a starting year, and that was because 2008 was the year when the financial crisis started, okay? So the 100% is the baseline, and this 100% is the revenue this competitor made in that year. 120%, the blue line, which is Intergraph, is or has been our revenue in the same year. So in other words, in 2008, Intergraph PP&M was about 20% bigger than this mysterious competitor. So in 2009, when the crisis did hit us, their revenue went down by 10%, and so was 90% of the 2008 number. We also were hit by the crisis, but relatively mild, so our revenue went down to 117%. 2010 was the year the business came back, and so both companies did increase revenue and did grow again. Mysterious competitor to 106, and we to 140% of our 2008 figure. And finally, last year's revenue, they did grow to 119, and we did grow to 163. So these are not absolute numbers, okay, but percentages. But I just wanted to show and clarify who is who in this business, going beyond assumptions and claims and whatever, you know. So that's a fact. And again, thank you for that trust. As you can see from that slide, which is showing our world revenue, which is or has been split in 3 main regions. Nowadays, we will show, and from now on, we'll show China as a separate region, simply because the business in China is growing that fast and is getting a size that it makes sense to run China as a fully fledged separate region. But this is a view into 2011, okay? So as you see, our business is quite balanced between the world regions, right? With about 1/3 each. But that's just a static snapshot, of course. And the picture at the end of this year might look different. In general, I can say that Asia Pacific and China specifically has the highest growth rate. China did grow last year by more than 50%, which is great, and they continue to do well. So Asia is the most and fastest growing region we have, and that's nothing special. I think that's the same for many companies working internationally. Americas, South and North America, about the same size as Asia now. The business there is quite good, specifically in South America. North America, Canada is very, very good, and the US is coming back after a few years which were challenging. So I hope that this continues. The signals are good. And finally, EMEA, being the largest region we have, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, with 36%, doing well too. But again, this European finance crisis we currently see is certainly not helpful to create large growth rates in that year. But we're doing okay. So care. We care. We care, and this is because it's one of the reasons, I think, why you trust us and invest in our solutions. We care in your business. We care in what you do. For this, we have about 1,800 people worldwide. If I would count the distributors we work with in a couple of countries, it's probably rather 2,000 people worldwide, being placed and represented in more than 40 countries. So we are there when you need us. We invest. We constantly invest and grow to invest in developing products, improving products, developing complete new products, and the great stuff you will see from my colleagues in a few minutes is the result of this investment. I want to give you a snapshot on 3D. So this is both. This is PDS and Smart 3D. And as you can see, the first quarter of this year was the first time that the revenue with Smart 3D reached the same level as PDS. What does surprise me most on this slide or picture is how stable PDS still is. I have personally thought that we would see a decline, but as you see, it's still going on, and that's absolutely fine with me. PDS is a great product, so don't worry if you're on PDS and want to remain to be so for a while. But 3D is gaining ground. Smart 3D, I'm sorry, gaining ground, and first time, same size. In absolute numbers, the number of Smart 3D seats did hit the mark of 12,000 last year, new record. And Q1 of this year, I don't show that here because I want to show you 2011 numbers, but in Q1 we did do more than 13,000 seats, 13,400 or something. So it's continuing to growing fast and dynamically. Even more, I think, impressive is that picture. Information management, Smart Plant Foundation, Smart Plant for owner-operators, and Smart Plant Materials basically is combined in this product group. 500% growth since 2004. You have seen a few minutes ago that the total product mix growth was 3 times, 300%. Information management is 500%. So almost double the growth rate as the combined products. In the past, for those of you which are working with Intergraph since a long period of time, you know that 10, 12 years ago, basically the only product we had was PDS, 3D design system, right? And 3D, as you can see, is still combined PDS and 3D and CADWorks is still the dominant product line we have, representing 56% of our total revenue. But information management, as you have seen, did grow by 500%, 5 times at the same time, and represents now 23% of our total revenue. And at the end of this year, 2012, I think this mark will be maybe not 30, but getting close to 30%. And the 2D products, Smart Plant P&ID, instrumentation, etc., including CISA 2, is solid 21%, and as you see, is also growing much faster than the total. So in other words, we, in the last couple of years or decade, we diversified our product line from being 3D only to being information management, intelligent 2D, etc., right? And that's quite good because it helps us in general to grow, but it's also good because it provides stability to our business. But for you, it provides you a much larger spectrum of solutions to integrate and to work with, all coming from one hand, from one vendor. And we care about all of it directly with you. So that's quite a good picture too, I think. So, talking about the future, we will continue to work hard to optimize the productivity of our products, and we'll see if and how we can further broaden our portfolio, either by developing own products, or by doing selected and selective acquisitions. We also will continue to work and improve the integration between our products so that you really can have input one at one place only and can use the data you input one at each and any other application. This is not only for our own product suite, but also for third-party applications. And specifically, this is the case for Hexagon products from our mother company. But the most important point, I believe, for you is that you know that we do not forget our rule number 1. And that is, we never let the customer down. Whatever you need and whenever you need us, we are there to assist. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Patrick Holcomb, Intergraph Process, Power and Marine Executive Vice President of Global Business Development. Charles Evans, Intergraph Process, Power and Marine Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer. And Melanie Eakes, Intergraph Process, Power and Marine Senior Vice President of Global Support and Quality Assurance.
As we begin the technology side of our presentation, I'd like to point out the most critical component of good technology, and that's our relationship together, all of you and us. It's only this kind of relationship where we work together effectively on the technology and the discipline expertise and the business expertise is really the only way that any of this really comes together. In particular, last year we began to focus on our technical user forums and launched those on LinkedIn last year. This year we've had a 40% increase in participation in our technical user forum meetings. I'd like to ask everybody who is in the user meetings, the tough meetings, if you could please stand up. Everybody, if you're in the tech, thank you very much. I want to say thank all of you. I saw a lot of familiar faces and many new ones. These guys sacrificed and traveled an extra day to come out and do that. For those of you who are not in our Tufts, who should be, or if you know someone who should, talk to one of the people in the red shirts who are already involved, and you can ask them what they're doing and what it's like, or you can go to our website or to our kiosk forum upstairs, and you can get involved yourself in these. We'd love to have you because we think this is the most critical part of our technology. Now, one of the things that we've heard in our user forum meetings frequently, and I believe is a very important theme, is interoperability. Here to talk about interoperability and some recent advances is my friend and our Chief Technology Officer, Charles Evans. Charles?
Thank you, Patrick. What is interoperability? We have heard you loud and clear. You've asked us many, many times in these technical user forums to ensure that things work together. Is interoperability the standards that are used? Is it translation? Is it operating freedom? Is it where that electronic world meets the physical world? Is it a set of tools that enable you to work together regardless of where you are in the globe? On behalf of the hundreds of developers that we have and product people who are working on this, I'm happy to show you some of the advances that we've made on that this year. With Hexagon, many of the scanning capabilities that are out there have become much more efficient. They're much more cost effective. You have millimeter level accuracy in scanning the existing plants and using them for rework. It's a comprehensive solution that allows you to scan once and measure many, many times. It's safer. You can put people out one time to do the scan, and then you don't have to send people back into those hazardous situations in offshore facilities or in nuclear plants. And you can have a very realistic view of what the plant looks like with 360-degree panoramic bubble views. Where this comes together with our technology is in our design tools and in our other tools. Here, I'm showing where Eskom is using scanning to capture existing information. We have SmartPlant 3D, able to reference the point cloud directly. As you move around, you see the interaction of the two. As the designer automatically extracts the center lines and creates pipes from the point cloud and continues to route pipe directly in that environment, notice how it automatically shows you clash. It shows you where you're going to run into problems, where there are clashes between the new objects that you're creating and the existing facility. We believe that this will really help in the rework that you have in your plants and turning the digital world into the physical world into the digital world. In working with our partners in Hexagon and with Leica, we believe there are great opportunities in meshing these together to help you be much more efficient and effective. Interoperability is also creating smart reference data that your global teams can use to work together. we have an interface that we've developed this year directly between Smart Plant reference data and Smart Plant 3D. You no longer have to create spreadsheets for your reference data. You can automatically build your reference data in Smart Plant reference data and put it into Smart Plant 3D. Smart Plant reference data allows you to manage your content centrally, your specs and catalogs in one place, target them for specific projects at different places around the world, and deploy them effectively. As we said, for Smart Plant 3D, you can also use that same set of specs, catalogs out of Smart Plant reference data, and generate specifications for PDS. And interoperability is also working with non-Intergraph applications. You can use that same set of specs and reference data and generate the reference data that's needed for PDMS projects as well. Let's continue that theme. We have customers who are wanting to use one system and generate Smart Plant 3D and automatically create projects where they have to target PDMS. So we're taking piping, structure, HVAC, and the other disciplines directly out of Smart Plant 3D and putting it into PDMS. We have customers such as Grenland Group who are doing this in production today. We have great feedback from our customers and from the owner-operators who are receiving that data. We're pretty excited about this capability and how it allows you to use Smart 3D effectively. Interoperability is also leveraging models that are created in many different sources, such as Smart 3D, PDS, and putting those into a composite view in Smart 3D or in Smart Plant Review. We can bring in PDMS models, and this isn't just a graphical view. Notice how that as it comes in, it's automatically re-symbolized because we have all of the intelligent information. We can bring in solid models from Solid Edge, SolidWorks, NX, and others, and reference that and use that effectively in Smart Plant 3D. Structures from Tekla, where you can bring those in, reference them, and use all of this efficiently and effectively and clash detect them. We can bring CAD models from AutoCAD, MicroStation, and others, and reference those for industrial architecture. CADWorks models can also be referenced as part of the composite model that we have in 3D Interop. Interoperability is also made possible and more effective through the internet and now through the cloud. And what makes the internet into the cloud is really smart applications. There are a lot of buzzwords going around about cloud computing. There are public clouds and private clouds. There's software as a service. What we're doing is leveraging the infrastructure and the capabilities of Citrix and others to provide our solutions to you, allowing you to access your information where you want it and when you want it, enabling mobile devices to access your information, and enabling your teams to work together efficiently and effectively. Let's look at a typical scenario. Here we have a design team in Houston, another design team in Mumbai in India, and they need to work together on this project. The design team in Houston is working on this particular portion. The piping department has laid out what they need to design. Simultaneously, the design team in Mumbai has worked on a separate set of pipes that need to interconnect with these. And so they need to have a branch into the piping that was done in Houston. That is automatically put on the to-do list, and the to-do list goes to the engineer in Houston, and he sees that there's a request for a branch into his pipe. And so he can accept that. And then automatically, through the specifications, those branches are created, and those appropriate fittings and tees are put in place. When the designer comes in Mumbai the next morning, or within the next few seconds, he sees, oh, okay, I'm branched in, I had requested that. Other disciplines can also work together. The team in Houston has those that are putting equipment, HVAC, but they have requirements from the structural team in Mumbai. These can work efficiently and effectively together using our global workshare capability in SmartPlant 3D and Citrix. Interoperability is also allowing owner-operators and EPCs to work together more efficiently. Shell has been using our cloud technology to enable EPCs to work together on this particular project, the GTL project in Pearl. There were 25 contractors from France, Germany, India, Japan, Mexico, Pakistan, all over the globe working together. They ended up with 15 million items of data, about 500,000 documents, all shared in the cloud. Interoperability is also standards. I love this quote from the founder of Digital Equipment, Ken Olsen. He said, "The nice thing about standards is there's so many to pick from." We support those that are most efficient and most effective for our industry. We've worked closely to develop the CIS2 standard. We've worked with FIATech on 15926. In fact, we pioneered much of what goes into that today. We've worked with the Open Design Alliance on integrating with AutoCAD data. We also support de facto standards. Everybody uses Microsoft Excel. We need to make sure we interface with Excel files, with Word files. People want to share their information in PDFs, so we generate 3D PDFs from our applications or 2D PDFs. We believe that supporting these de facto standards is really, really important. But standards are not only about data exchange, standards are also about unifying your content and making sure that you have the right reference data that meets the standards for the industry and for your corporation. And so we've worked with many different industry standard bodies around the globe, in each location where we are, in each industry that we serve, to provide an efficient and effective way to take their standards and provide them in the electronic world. One group that we've worked with quite a bit is FIATech, and we're working on the ISO 15926 standard, and we have productized the export of P&IDs through 15926. Interoperability is really, really important to you. You've told us that through the technical user forums and through the many different companies that we meet with and work with on a daily basis. We've shown you how interoperability takes that real world and meshes it with the digital world. We've shown you how it allows your teams to work together most efficiently. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Melanie Eakes, who is the Senior Vice President of Certification and Support, to talk about quality.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Charles. Thank you. Let's talk about quality. I'd like to begin with a quote from Edward Deming. He is a world-renowned statistical control and quality management expert. You may have heard of him. They fondly call him the father of the quality movement. He once said, "Improving quality will reduce your costs and improve your productivity." And I think in our world especially, of this growing complexity, we have very fast-track projects. They have to have them done quick. They're mega projects, bigger than anything we've ever done before. So building quality into your project data as part of the process from the very beginning, from day one, all the way through, and having visibility into that quality is becoming even more critical to all of us. Today, I would like to emphasize a few of the ways that the enterprise can help you with that quality improvement that you may or may not be aware of. As we all know, P&ID drives the downstream tasks. So making those right decisions early are going to be key to ensure a high-quality design that lowers the risk of additional costs and schedule changes. And therefore, it's a key to all of our project success. In addition, with P&ID, we offer some innovative and unique ways to capture our best practices in rules. We can help you to deliver that high-quality product to the owners ensure that it meets construction needs, and also to ensure that it has best operational practices. So from start all the way through to finish. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. These are going to be very simple. We're going to take a pump and safety configuration from this as-designed P&ID. Now, let's execute some rules against that design. Specifically, let's look at this pump configuration. Very quickly, we can see that we're missing a pressure indicator prior to the check valve. Now, that's part of our engineering design best practices, so we want to make sure that we put that in. So these checks can find that. Now let's look at the relief valve configuration. There's a CSO, car sealed open, label that's missing. Well, this is required when operating the plant and to allow for safe testing of relief valves without jeopardizing the safety of that plant operator. We deliver over 3,000 rules. You can use them on certain projects, it can be by customer, or you can even do it by industry. The key is you can reuse these from project to project. So you can start small and you can increase over time, which is just going to make you better and better, and have your quality is going to increase with every single project that you do. Now let's move and talk about tool integration. How do we ensure that the P&ID and the 3D model are consistent? Well, we want to use some automatic consistency checking with the ability to approve differences, because we may or may not always want them to be exact. We want to reduce errors by running topological checks to ensure that the engineering intent is met. So to do that, let's look at, we have a P&ID on the left, and then on the right, we have the 3D model. They were created at the same time, which is typical in your organization. Now, the white items on the 3D model are correlated to the magenta items on the P&ID. That simply means that they're the same tagged items. The blue items mean that we didn't find a match, so we need to investigate to figure out what the problem was. Let's look at the bold blue line that we've indicated there. So we're going to use the vessel that was correlated to find the same vessel in the 3D model, making it very quick. So now we can very quickly figure out that we simply missed modeling a line. So now we can make that change on the 3D model, and now we're in sync with the P&ID again. The next example, let's take a look at the purple line. So purple indicates that we don't exactly match topologically. So again, we're going to use the P&ID. We'll find the same item on the 3D model. Very quickly, we see that a drain is missing. I've got two options here. I can either say, hey, send it back to the P&ID guys and say you need to add the drain, or I can approve that difference, which might be acceptable in my practice, and then I can move on. Now, the good news is we can report to you the difference between what was actually approved as a difference or approved and is still green, or was accepted. The next one I want to talk to you about is our Caesar 2 integration. A couple of years we acquired the company, and we got Caesar 2 as part of our product suite. We made a promise to you guys that we were going to do a better integration than what we had then, and we've done that. This integration is going to help you reduce errors because we automatically transfer both data and graphics over to Caesar 2. We streamline communication because we're going to allow you to view in context. And last, it's going to help support your fast-track schedules because, again, you're not going to have to do all that additional work with remodeling in the stress analysis package. So again, we have our 3D model. Let's assume we're ready to do stress. So we're going to take the information from the 3D model, push it into the Caesar 2 product. All the property data comes across, as well as all the graphics. No remodeling is required. Now we want to use the 3D interop capability and bring in the surrounding elements to do the analysis in the proper context. Again, this is another application of the 3D interop technology that Charles showed you earlier this morning. Now with this integration, we bring in topology, so you have accurate no redrawing. We bring in all the connection types, so the weld information and that type thing. And we also bring in all the process attribute information. With all of this high quality, awesome data, the analyst can now just concentrate on his task of analysis. He doesn't have to do data entry and validation. So all of this helps you to compress your schedules, ensure a higher quality and a safer design. But we're not even done yet. We are also going to bring that data back into Smart 3D. So you've done your work in the stress analysis package. We're going to bring that into Smart 3D, again, using the interop technology. You can see the red center line. That came from the stress package. So they moved a branch. So now we can very quickly correct that in the 3D model. In addition, let's take a look at the load cones. This one came in, and it says it's coincident with the another pipe support that's there. So it doesn't need to place one, so let's check and see what the issue is. So we're going to select that in the 3D model. We bring up the properties from the 3D model. We also bring the properties from the stress analysis package. We can very quickly see that we simply missed a load difference. And so we make that change, we recalculate, recompute that support, and it replaces, reducing errors, reducing man hours for modeling and transferring data, and also streamlines that communication. So we already talked about how to use rules and automation in the P&ID. That was the first thing we talked about. So now let's talk about how rules and automation can improve the quality in 3D to ensure best practices are followed, ensure constructability, and best operational practice. This is a real-world example that we received. It was a valve operator that was actually located too high for manual operation. Now, there are specific guidelines, and you may even have contractual requirements for the placement of valve operators. With our 3D data-centric approach, you can automatically determine if these manually operated valves are located within a certain height from the nearest floor. The designer is going to be advised in real time, and he can very quickly make that change in Smart 3D, which is going to avoid a very large, costly impact downstream. Now, the next example is going to show you about compliance. We all have compliance to regulatory standards such as OSHA that we may have to meet. Compliance to these regulatory standards for a stair tower is critical from a safety and operations standpoint. So using our .NET automation for 3D, compliance can absolutely be assured. The OSHA standards were predefined in this Excel spreadsheet, and then they were reloaded at placement time. A designer can override any of these parameters that he's allowed to, such as the number of levels that you want for the platform. Again, ensuring the compliance to those regulatory standards. Now, you may not be aware, but we've really made some significant advances in our cable auto routing using rules to determine cable fill calculations. So I wanted to this morning to talk to you a little bit about that. In a typical plant, ship, or offshore project, there are going to be thousands of cables. Using the Smart Plant Enterprise, we can use the cable information that actually was predefined in our 2D Smart Plant electrical product to auto route these cables through the network of trays and conduits that exist in Smart 3D. Cable fill calculations based on any C codes are applied during the routing process to ensure proper fill levels for every cable tray in that network. This is going to improve your code compliance for safety. Rules have been optimal and accurate for now. Your quantities are going to be much more accurate. Our customers have reported to us that they've actually been able to do a 5% reduction on the purchased cable lengths on projects using these exact rules. Now, these NEC rules that I talked about they're outside the code, so you can modify those to any of the rules that you have to your particular location. So now, let's talk about deliverables. This, of course, is just a small sampling of some of the different drawing types that you can extract from Smart 3D. Of course, they're all fully automated, which is going to allow you to focus on engineering where you should, and you're going to treat these drawings as just a report from the database. Each of you know that we have these. You can find them on the web. We continue to update and get newer and better drawings out there. In this next section, we can automatically generate them. So what you may not know is that we can actually help you manage the change for your deliverables. So earlier we talked about the Caesar 2 story, and we showed that we actually moved a branch on one of our models, and then we also changed a pipe support. So now that we've done that, how do we figure out which drawings that we need to reissued. You know, what should be updated? Well, we have a capability to help you. We have a drawings console, and that drawing console will show you all the different drawing types that you have if you've selected by design area or whatever. It will actually put a red X by each of the drawings that are out of date. So giving you that immediate feedback as to the state of the drawings. Then it's a very simple matter to say you want to update those drawings. They will be quickly updated. You can re-extract those. They'll be updated. And then you're in a position to reissue that package of drawings much more quickly than you ever were before. Again, you're going to reduce errors because you're generating these drawings from the model. And by the way, we do remember the any manual edits that you made the first time. So that means that the second time you extract that, it's going to be much quicker. We streamline communication because we show you what's out of date. So again, you may not know about this feature, and I thought it was important to bring it to you today. This last item I want to talk to you about is consistency checking. There are a lot of obstacles to maintaining consistency during a project, especially today with the fast-track projects that we have. We require starting early on every discipline. We work in parallel. That simply is a fact of life. But in addition to that, even if everything was consistent, there are scope changes that happen very late in the project. And so you need to check everything over again to make sure that everything is still in sync. You're going to have inconsistencies, absolutely. We know it. Checking manually is a heavy cost and a bad time burden for all of us. What we really want is an easy way to manage these inconsistencies and have early visibility into what is different. So I think this picture captures exactly how we all feel about the checking process. There's a lot of paper, it's really tedious and time consuming, and you know, it's really easy to miss something with all this different checking and changes happening late in the project. But using the Smart Plant Enterprise consistency reports, you can see what is missing or different, even down to the property level. Now, in this example, you can check multiple disciplines, you can check multiple sources, all in one check. So this is true for anything that has been published to the enterprise. So you can check in areas that are most critical for your deliverables. Let's say you've got to get those drawings out that we talked about a while ago. You may want to check specifically on those to make sure everything is in sync. You can check by system, you can check by unit, or you can even check by change order. So since this is so much easier to use, you can start checking much earlier in the project. So using Smart Plant Enterprise consistency reporting, your project quality can be visible and understood from the very beginning and then managed throughout the project. That keeps you from avoiding those costly expenses toward the end of the project when you have to do all that checking for handover. So now that concludes my presentation on quality, and I would like to ask Patrick Holcomb, our Executive Vice President of Business Development, to come and speak with you about productivity.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you. So who cares about productivity? I hope some of you do. You know, we've seen some great examples here from Charles and Melanie about how we can improve interoperability and quality of deliverables in the design process, procurement, materials management. And yet we haven't spoken about the single largest group that's involved in the placement of these assets. Construction is by far where all of the people are, where all of the cost is, and where all of the risk is in any major capital project. Construction has been, in many ways, left behind by technology. So we begin to look at how can we improve this area of the project using technology that we have today, bringing together the physical and the digital world. In order to answer this question about the future of construction and construction technology, I think first of all you have to know a little bit more about where we stand today. What's happening? There's some good news. Business is good. Projects are up. Spending up anywhere from 15 to 20% on projects. So that's good for all of us. We're going to have an opportunity. The bad news is the statistics say that we're going to spend that money relatively inefficiently with significant waste, but also significant opportunity. Do you know a quarter of all projects overrun by 30% of the initial estimate? Do you know a quarter of them slip by over 20% from the initial schedule? Over a third of projects have major changes during the project. As you know, causes tremendous inefficiency, and yet many of those are launched anyway. This is based on data from over 12,000 different projects that were audited by the IPA in the past 5 years. We think the last chance to do something about construction is before it starts. As the IPA looked at construction readiness and project performance, they found a very strong correlation. Projects that were clearly ready for construction, had been well planned, could easily come in under budget and on time or better. But projects that were not ready, not well planned, not handled in detail, could easily see 60% or more in overruns. Those are career-ending overruns for those of you that are in the construction business. Now, the most critical part about getting construction right, obviously, is materials management. And that's why we've built such a tight integration with Smart Plant Construction, our Smart Plant Materials product. Because if you don't have the materials there, the people are going to stand there on their shovel and watch. That's necessary, but it's not sufficient. There are many other constraints in construction. For those of you that may have some field experience in construction, you know that there are a multitude of constraints around critical equipment, like trucks and cranes, critical procedures, such as safety, perhaps, or owner-operator checkoff points. All of those constraints have to be managed effectively if we're going to have a meaningful increase in construction tool time, which is in the construction world, that's kind of the vernacular for efficiency. How well did they plan for those constraints so that people are using the tools and not leaning on them? When those kinds of things are planned, we can make construction much more predictable, much more efficient, and more cost-effective. Now, the other unique thing about construction, aside from design or procurement, is that it happens in the field. So this is a nice opportunity for mobile applications. You see here behind me an early prototype available to see in the exhibit floor on an iPad. This is for a construction foreman. They have an entire work package for their team on this iPad, and they're able to, as the process goes for their team in the next few weeks or perhaps a month, they can report back on real progress on that. Now we're starting to get a whole new level of visibility of what's actually happening in the project rather than what's been passed up through multiple layers of management. This gives everybody the ability to make much better decisions into the future depending on how things are going, and they see other options. Now, the construction industry has not been standing idle doing nothing. One of the most common techniques for realizing efficiency is modular construction. And so if you're going to accommodate that with the technology, you have to have modular construction planning. We've seen several different business scenarios in the world. Sometimes constructors actually have a captive fabricator near the site but still off-site, so they have controlled fabrication. In other instances, they may outsource the fabrication of these modules to entirely different contractors. So what we enabled in Smart Plant Construction is the ability to handle all three scenarios. So they can do detail planning, so the creation of the module itself. They can do module erection and fit-up planning, or they can do a combination of both of those. And that was one of the critical requirements that we heard from many constructors, is that they needed to have that level of flexibility in how they do the planning because of the flexibility and changes in all of the contracting out there in the world today. As a result of this, they get a very accurate view of how that construction is moving. One of the interesting things that we learned was from one of our partners, Atomenergo project in Russia. Russia is one of the emerging economies, is critical for this kind of large capital placements. Particularly Atomenergo project, because they work in nuclear, have to deal with very tight facilities. In nuclear facilities, there are many concrete rooms with limited access ways and big, bulky equipment. And somehow they have to figure out how everything gets into the rooms. They've experienced problems where they were unable to get everything in because they didn't put it in the right sequence of fit-up. And so we worked with them over the last year to create a sequencing simulation so that they know exactly when to put that equipment into the right place, into the right room. Offshore and marine is another industry of tremendous importance for us, as we all as a society need more energy to support our ways of life. Now, offshore and marine is no different than any other industry. When it comes to construction, it's about a team of people who have the right materials and the right tools at the right time. It's about easy-to-build work packages that can be applied in a scalable manner to a large group of construction people. One of the other things you've probably realized as we talk about this is that construction of many of these large projects is not going to be in U.S. countries, or English-speaking countries only. Russian and Portuguese and Chinese are languages that are critical due to the large mega projects happening in those areas. And so we've begun to also support that with our technology, along with an easy-to-use type of user experience so that construction people will feel comfortable. Now, it's important, if for any of you have been on a thick wall piping project, you know the importance of detailed weld planning in construction planning. But we can't really go anywhere without talking about safety. By having safety, the standard safety forms and processes built into our work package planning, we can ensure compliance on the project. Of course, there are many features that are quite generic, such as the generic materials requests are required. And ultimately, what happens in the end is this provides a whole new level of executive transparency and reporting. In the past, frankly, I think executives felt that they never really had control of projects. But by doing that, they can see what's happening far in advance of what they could before. So in summary, we think that the future of construction is probably oriented around work package planning, and we think that our technology, Smart Plant Construction, can play a big role in helping our partners, you guys, to do better in this area. Now, construction is quite interesting, and surprisingly, we've not yet spoken about the single largest group of people who work on these assets. We're still working on the tip of the iceberg, if you will. The single largest group of people are the owner-operators. Obviously, there's only a small fraction of new plants being created each year. Owner-operators have had a similar problem for many years, and I won't belabor it too much, but they are frequently cursed with a handover that looks like this for information. That information may or may not be consistent when it's handed over, and then it loses integrity over time. That makes it very difficult to build reliable work processes and operations excellence on top of that information if it's constantly changing or if it's not trusted. One of the first things we did to help owner-operators was create the validation, transformation, and loading engine. This is very similar to a process separator, except this is a data and document separator. And simply what it does is it takes transmittals from subcontractors or fabricators. It runs it against a set of rules to check for quality. Is it tagged appropriately? Are the spaces filled out? Are the spaces within the expected range? The good information can then be loaded to a target system, like an SAP or an SPO system. Bad information can be sent back to the supplier to be fixed and corrected. However, we have to have our glasses on in the real world. Most owner-operators are dealing with most of their assets that already exist, or what we call a brownfield situation. What you see behind me is a laser scan from a company called Hexagon, the largest power generator in Africa. They have scanned their facilities, and you can see this one is literally brown after some years of use. They've scanned this using the Leica TrueView technology. This has started to give them some whole new opportunities around planning their maintenance and modification projects. We've gone further as a result of the Hexagon integration with Intergraph, and we've started integrating with Leica in our Smart Plant for Owner-Operator system. One of the capabilities this delivers for Hexagon is to do very accurate, millimeter accuracy maintenance and modification project design rather than the tape measure accuracy that we've been accustomed to in the past, which is always, of course, associated with a field fit emblem on there, and usually results in a longer maintenance project as a result. A lot of operations and maintenance, just like construction, happens out in the field, not in a home office, not in an air-conditioned box. So we've also created a prototype mobile application for owner-operators. The first one that we built was the SPO Inspection Assistant. You can see here the integration of the Intergraph PP&M technology, SPO, with the Leica technology, the TrueView, all on a single tablet. This enables an inspector to take a work package, go out in the field, execute the inspection, fill out the forms that are required, and the system helps him to remember everything that needs to be filled out so that we know when it's complete. By doing this, and particularly by doing this over a period of years, we save ourselves a lot of trouble because now all of that information is available to people in the future who may be doing troubleshooting or working on other sort of maintenance or modification projects. We think that this kind of technology can be practically applied, and it also helps the inspector himself. By giving a nice little briefcase function, they can then upload all that information back into SPO. Now, unfortunately, it may hurt us, it may hurt me, but not all applications have to be Smart Plant applications. We work very well with some partners like Simonzi, as you see here behind me. Simonzi is one of our exhibitors out on the floor, and they will take a model, either a laser scan model or a CAD model, and they will build a virtual game simulation that they can use for training technicians. You might say, well, that seems interesting, but who cares? Well, I think you should think about it from an owner-operator perspective. Imagine you're sending a new person out in the field, and you want them to push a button in a very complicated facility handling flammable, high-pressure, high-temperature equipment and process fluids. Wouldn't you feel better if they were able to first execute that effectively in a virtual game simulation before they push the button in real life? Wouldn't you feel better? Wouldn't you think the technician would feel better doing it? I know that I would. I've seen some of the stuff that they do, and it provides lots of different options for the technician so that they're really confident when it comes time to push the button and turn the wrench for real. In short, what you can see is we are slowly building out our portfolio to support the entire life cycle, from the capital phase into the operations and maintenance phase. And as Ola said earlier on his keynote, this is really about combining the digital world, this virtual asset, with the real world and making good decisions as a result. In closing, what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite my colleagues up, and my boss and president, Gerhard. We are so happy to have all of you guys here today. We think this partnership is incredibly important. We value it. We hope that you have a great experience. We've got some great presentations coming about what people have already done with this technology in the real world, and we look forward to the future with you. Thank you.